May 3rd, 1900, Volume 3, The Feast of the Cross in Heaven. This morning I found myself outside of myself, and I saw all of heaven studded with crosses, some small, some large, some medium. Some which were larger emanated more splendor. It was a most sweet enchantment to see so many crosses adorning the firmament, more refulgent than suns. Then it seemed that heaven opened, and one could see and hear the feast that the blessed were making for the cross. Those who had suffered more were celebrated more on this day. One could distinguish in a special way the martyrs and those who had suffered in a hidden way. Oh, how esteemed were the cross and those who had suffered more in that blessed dwelling! As I was seeing this, a voice resounded throughout the whole of heaven, saying, "If the Lord did not send the crosses upon the earth, he would be like a father who has no love for his own children, who wants to see them poor and dishonored, instead of honored and rich." The rest that I saw during this feast I have no words to describe. I can feel it within me, but I am unable to express it. So I remain silent. May 3rd, 1908, Volume 8, Effects of the Circulation of the Divine Will in the Soul. Continuing in my usual state, I felt our Lord near me for just a little, and he told me, "My daughter, with the soul who does my will circulates in her whole being like blood. So she is in continuous contact with me, with my power, wisdom, charity, beauty. She takes part in all that is mine. As she no longer lives of her own volition, her volition lives in mine, and as mine circulates in hers, hers circulates in all of my being, and I feel her continuous contact. And as I feel touched by her continuously, you cannot comprehend how drawn I feel to love her, to favor her, to answer her in everything she asks. If I denied it, I would deny it to myself. Besides, all things considered, since she lives in my will, she asks for nothing but what I myself want. This is what she wants, and this alone makes her happy, for herself and for others, because her life is more in heaven than on earth. This is the fruit that my will produces, to beatify her in advance. May 3rd, 1916, Volume 11, Universal Prayer. How Jesus Prayed in the Divine Will. While I was praying, my adorable Jesus placed himself close to me, and I could hear that he too was praying. So I began to listen to him. Jesus told me, "My daughter, pray, but pray as I pray. Pour yourself entirely into my will, and you will find God and all the creatures in it. You will give them to God as if they were one single creature, because the divine volition is the owner of all. Then you will place at the feet of the divinity the good acts in order to give honor to it, and the bad ones in order to repair for them through the sanctity, power, and immensity of the divine will, from which nothing can escape." This was the life of my humanity upon earth. As holy as it was, I still needed this divine volition in order to give complete satisfaction to the Father and to redeem the human generations. In fact, only in this divine volition could I find all generations, past, present, and future, and all their thoughts, words, acts, and so forth, as though in act. In this holy will I took all the thoughts into my mind. Nothing could escape me. And for each one of them in particular I placed myself before the Supreme Majesty, and I repaired them. In the same will, I descended into the mind of each creature, giving them the good which I had pleaded for their intelligences. In my glances I took the eyes of all creatures, their words in my voice, their movements in my movements, their works in my hands, their steps in my feet, their affections and desires in my heart, and making them my own, in the divine will my humanity satisfied the Father, and I saved the poor creatures. And the divine Father remained satisfied. He could not reject me, he himself being the holy will. Would he perhaps reject himself? Certainly not. More so, since in these acts he found perfect sanctity, unreachable and enrapturing beauty, highest love, immense and eternal acts, invincible power. This was the whole life of my humanity upon earth, which continues in heaven and in the most blessed sacrament. Now why can't you also do this? For one who loves me, united with me everything is possible. In my will, pray and bring before the divine majesty the thoughts of all within your thoughts, the glances of all in your eyes, in your words, movements, affections, and desires, those of your brothers, in order to repair them and plead light, grace, and love for them. In my will you will find yourself in me and in all. You will live my life and will pray with me. The divine Father will be happy, and the whole of heaven will say, "Who is calling us from earth? Who is the one who wants to compress this holy will within herself, enclosing all of us together?" And how much good the earth can obtain, making heaven descend upon earth. May 3rd, 1926, Volume 19, How Only in the Divine Will is Prayer Universal. How the divine will, bilocating, reigns in the soul as in its own dwelling. The divine will holds supremacy over the divine being and is the ruler of all the divine attributes. I was about to fuse myself in the holy divine volition according to my usual way, and I said, "Supreme Majesty, I come in the name of all, from the first to the last man which will exist on earth, to give you all the homages, the adorations, the praises, the love that each creature owes you, and to make all reparations for all and for each sin." Now while I was saying this, my lovable Jesus moved in my interior and told me, "My daughter, this way of praying is only of my will, because it alone can say, 'I come in the name of all before the Supreme Majesty.' In fact, with its all-seeingness and immensity, it sees everything and embraces every one. So it can say, not as a manner of speaking, but in reality, 'I come in the name of all, to do for you all that the creatures owe you.' No human will can say in reality, 'I come in the name of all.' This is the sign that my will reigns in you." While he was saying this, my Jesus continued to pray in a loud voice. I followed him, and together we found ourselves before the Supreme Majesty. Oh, how beautiful it was to pray with Jesus! All things were invested by his words and acts, and since his will was everywhere and in each created thing, one could hear his creative words, his adorations, and everything he was doing being repeated everywhere. I felt myself becoming even smaller, being together with Jesus. I was all amazed, and he added, "My daughter, do not be surprised. It is my will that, bilocating, while reigning in God, reigns in the soul at the same time, and with its divine ways, it prays, loves, and operates within her. So it is impossible for us not to enjoy, not to love, not to listen to our will bilocated in the creature. On the contrary, it alone brings to us, as if on its lap, our joy, happiness, and love, which overflowed from our womb in our work ad extra, the creation. It repeats the feast for us. It renews in us the joy we felt in creating so many beautiful things, worthy of us. How not to love the one who gives us the occasion to bilocate our will, by letting it reign within herself, to give us divine love, adoration, and glory. Therefore the living in my will is the prodigy of prodigies, because everything is in the will, both for God and for the creature. How many things we could do, but because we do not want them, we do not do them. When we want something, we are all love, all power, all eyes, hands, and feet. In sum, all of our being is centralized in that act which our will wants to do. On the other hand, if our will does not want it, none of our attributes moves. It seems they have no life for anything that our will does not want to do. So our will holds supremacy, dominion over our being, and it is the ruler of all our attributes. This is why the greatest thing we could give to the creature was our will, and in it we centralized our whole being. Could there be a love more intense, a miracle more sensational than this? Even more, as much as we can give to the creature, it seems nothing to us compared to giving her our will, reigning and dominating in her. In fact, the other things we can give her are the fruits of our works, of our dominions, while by giving her our will, it is not fruits, but our very life and our very dominions. What has more value, the fruits or the life? Certainly the life, because by giving the life of our will, with it we give the font of all our goods, and one who possesses the font of goods does not need the fruits. Even if the creature gave us everything, or made the greatest sacrifices, but did not give us her little will in order to let ours reign, she would still give us nothing. Even more, when things are not produced by our will, as great as they might be, we look at them as extraneous to us, as things which do not belong to us. I was thinking of what Jesus had told me, and I said to myself, is all this possible? That the divine will reaches the point of bilocating in order to reign in the creature as in its own dwelling, in its divine womb? And Jesus added, "My daughter, do you know how this happens? Imagine a little and poor hovel in which a king taken by love for it wants to reside. So the voice of the king can be heard coming from within that hovel. From it come his commands, as well as his works. Inside of the hovel there are foods apt to nourish the king, and the chair worthy of him on which he can sit. So the king has changed nothing of that which befits his royal person. He has only changed his residence. From the royal palace of his own will, and with greatest delight, he has chosen the hovel. The little hovel is the soul. The king is my will. How many times do I not hear the voice of my will that prays, speaks, teaches, in the little hovel of your soul? How many times do I not see my works come out of it? And I rule, vivify, and preserve all created things from your little hovel. My will does not take into account your littleness. On the contrary, it likes it greatly. What it looks for is absolute dominion, because through absolute dominion it can do whatever it wants, and place whatever it likes. End of May 3rd. Fiat.